This is Greg Pass with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is September the 25th, 2022, and I am at the tank farm in Nokesville, Virginia. I have the pleasure to sit down with Hoang Lee. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you.
And tell us your full name and where you were born.
My full name is Hoang Ki Lee, and I was born in Gia Dinh, Vietnam. Now, it's called Ho Chi Minh City, but by that time it was called Gia Dinh, and it was in the Republic of Vietnam.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you served in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So tell us a little bit about your upbringing in Vietnam and what brought you into police or military service in Vietnam.
Yes. I was born in a poor family. My father used to own a sawmill business, and then when the war took place, his house was destroyed, his business was destroyed, so he moved us close to town, and he became a cab driver, and I was brought up in a poor family. I have 10 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So my father invested to me because I was the eldest kids in the family. And when I finished high school and I passed the baccalaureate exam, that I applied for a job with the U.S. Embassy. And by that time, the U.S. Embassy need interpreter translators.
What year would this have been?
It was 1965, sometime in May 1965. And I was employed with USAID, that stands for United States Agency for International Development.
And can you tell us a little bit about the political climate, what was going on in 1965 in Vietnam?
In 1965, there was a lot of military activities, and I believe it was the first Marine that landed in Da Nang that helped the Vietnamese to fight against communist insurgents to the Republic of Vietnam, which is South Vietnam. And I was recruited as an interpreter translator, serving with a police advisor.
So what exactly did that entail? Tell us a little bit about your average day as an interpreter. Were you interacting with the Americans at that point?
Yes, the police advisor was recruited from the U.S. For example, they are patrolman or sergeant in the police department. They came over to Vietnam and worked under USAID, an office called Office of Public Safety, OPS. And my first advisor was assigned to the remote province, very end of South Vietnam. It's called Cà Mau. And I served there with him for about 5-6 months. And then we moved around in the Mekong River Delta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was the only one that can speak English by that time. So other military units in the area, they sometimes, borrow me to work with them. From the medic group, providing health care to the civilian in the area, to the military who patrol along the Mekong River on the PPR, we call boat patrol on the river. And we went all the way to the Cambodian border. Wow. and killed the engine so that the Viet Cong during that time, they couldn't hear the engine sound, so we can catch them.
So you're supposed to be working with the police, but you're also working with the military as well. Is
Correct?
That
Yes. We were advisor to the police, but at night we also work with the military, U.S. military.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they flew a helicopter. They borrow me because when they land into some area, they want to work with the local military or civilian in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time with the U.S. military, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Forces.
So tell us about some of your memories from working with the United States military. Do you have any specific incidents that stand out in your mind?
There was no incident, but when we were on that PPR or patrol boat river, went up to the near the border with Cambodia. There was some attack by the communists, but sniper shot, and sometimes they try to shoot that manpad weapon on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
They call B-40, but we stay clear out of the range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you served with several branches. Marine Corps, Army. Did you work with the Army at all?
Army too, yes.
And you said Navy.
Navy, yes.
And how long were you doing this for?
I did that for 2 years.
And did you find most of the work you were doing was with the military or with the police?
Both. During the day, I worked for USAID. My job was to liaison with the police, picking up their reports and see any incident at night or any threat to the safety and security of the people. So I translated and I sent it to my boss, who was the police advisor. But many times the advisor have to go back to the U.S. for court duties, for other business. They have home leave, sick leave, ARNA. So I was there by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to pick up mail from headquarters, from Saigon. They sent down by Air America shuttle. And sometimes a military airplane came down, and I have to help them. Because sometimes when helicopter landed, people try to rush out there so that they can be evacuated to a safe area. And some people get hit because they didn't see that the back rotors.
Mm.
So I have to help them to build a barricade and make sure that people knows the safety rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say that you guys had a good relationship with the Americans?
Oh yes. So my advisor realized that I have some kind of police a type of experience. So they want me to join the Vietnamese police so that I can be a licensed officer with them.
And is that what happened?
And that's how it happened, yes.
So 2 years as an interpreter, then you became a police officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So walk us through that. So you're a Vietnamese police officer. You go through a police academy. Is it similar to the way it is in the United States? Or?
Correct. My academy lasts about more than 10 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we have to engage the first 3 months as a military officer. Yeah, they train us on all kind of military warfare. So
that's interesting. That's more than we have in the United States.
yeah, we have about 4 months in the U.S., but
wow.
In Vietnam it's about almost a year. Yeah.
Okay, so would that have put, when you went through the academy, would that have been like 67?
Correct. 67 and 68.
Okay. And when you graduated the police academy, were you working as a patrol officer, or what were your duties?
In Vietnam, when we have some kind of education background, they can make us as an officer, and we can wear the rank of a lieutenant right away. And in my case, they call it a B1 officer, which is a captain in the military, equal pay. Mm-hmm. So I became a Vietnamese police officer wearing that rank, a police captain. I still have that picture with me. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And where were you stationed at? I
stationed in Saigon, but my duty, I can cover the whole country. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. So Saigon, what's Saigon looking like in 1968? What's the temperature there? I think we have a lot of U.S. forces that are in that area. What's going on?
We had the Tet Offensive, and the guerrilla attacked the U.S. Embassy by that time. So my advisor, former police advisor, he called me and said, Hoang, are you available? You come out with me to the U.S. Embassy. So I was the first responder with him to the embassy after the U.S. Military police at the U.S. Embassy, stop and kill all the Viet Cong infiltrated to the embassy wall. Yeah.
What did that scene look like?
Oh, there's a lot of war crimes in that area. You talk about the big hole that they blew through the U.S. Embassy wall, and there were bodies, laying around there. Mm-hmm. And I was asked to communicate with the first prison police there. And we have the, what do you call it, the security officer, diplomatic security officer involved in that too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's how my role is kind of, more involved with the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Tet. Again, yes. Keeping in mind that a lot of people watching this video, especially Americans, might not have an idea on how significant that was. Can you talk globally, not globally, but how much of an impact did that have on the Vietnam War, that event?
The North Vietnamese strategists believed that when they attacked major city in South Vietnam, the people would uprise against the government. However, it was not so. The police and a few specialized unit was able to defeat the communist guerrilla, except in Hoang. They controlled the city for almost a month there, and they killed a lot of civilians. Mm-hmm. So what you saw now in Ukraine is very similar to what happened in Tet by that time.
Yeah. So your job as a police officer at this time, are you dealing more with criminal activity or military type?
I was appointed to the Narcotic Bureau, so that's how I involved with the criminal investigations. And I was sent to Japan to learn the skill in 1969 and came back.
So what did Japan have to do with it? Did they have a school there or something, like a narcotics?
Japan have what they call a National Police Agency, NPA. They invite us and other countries during that time. I remember there was a general from Iran, one general from Iran who went to Japan and attended the course there before the fall of the Shah, So we went to Japan for over a month for training on narcotics and other criminal investigation type.
So when you get done with the training, you went back into Vietnam and you were working with narcotics. What was the big narcotics issue at that time? What type of drugs? And
yes, because there were so much drug that produced from the Golden Triangle, which is in North Burma and Laos and southern China. It's been smuggled down to Thailand, and through the Gulf of Thailand, go to Vietnam. The major drug trafficking during that time. And most of that were run by Chinese from Hong Kong that migrate to Vietnam. They smuggle, and then they also distribute the drug to U.S. soldiers during the wartime. So it's my job to stop that from the Golden Triangle.
Did you work with Army CID?
Yes. And many times the Army CID asked me to take care of the problem near the base because many American soldiers, they went out there to buy drugs. And the drug was sold by little kids, 5, 10 years old. And they run after the American soldiers, say, "Sir, Okay, Salem, gum, chewing gum. But then the soldier asked him, you get skag? The boy say $5, $10. Skag. Skag is the slang word by the American soldier by that time for heroin. They call skag or smack or, you know. So the kids say $5, $10. And when they receive the money, they point out which rock in that area. You lift that rock. So when, you know, the kids were arrested, they have no rock in, no evidence in their hand. Mm-hmm. So they asked me to come out and I arrest all these kids and call their parents out. And they say, next time if I catch those kids around this area, I arrest the parents, not the kids, because you let the kid do this. And now you know. You cannot tell me you don't know. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, you know, they went home and they were so afraid. And the CID and also the provost marshal, who was a colonel, he heard about this. He came down, he visited my office. And the colonel was about to retire and go back to the U.S., but he got promoted to a special assistant to the director of the National Drug Abuse Policy at the White House. By that time, it was Dr. DuPont, who was the advisor to President Nixon. And this colonel, he asked me, Hoang, when you have a chance to go to the U.S. for training, remember to call me. I'd be very happy to see you. So in 1972, I had a chance to travel to the U.S. to attend a training course provided by USAID. It was called the International Police Academy, located at Georgetown, Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. And I forgot about the invitation by the colonel. But he called my training officer, is Hoang there? And my instructor came to the class and said, Hoang, there was someone from the White House called and wanted to talk to you.
That doesn't happen every day.
No. So everybody, you know, the instructor looked at me and said, you'd better rush to the phone right now. So the colonel said, I'm coming by and pick you up, you know. I want you to come and visit my office. So he introduced me to Dr. DuPont. And Dr. DuPont, after talking to me, he said, well, next week I have a press conference about what happened in Thailand, where the drug, you know, get into our school, international, a school for American diplomat children. I want you to come and attend this seminar, press conference. And I told the advisor, Dr. DuPont, sir, I cannot come to the White House without permission from my boss. And he asked, who is your boss? I told him that General Bin, the chief of the police. He said, let me see. So he sent out a request to General Bin advisor in Vietnam. And the next day I received a cable from General Bin saying he authorized me to come to the White House for the press conference. And I said that I don't know what, about Thailand. I know about the Golden Triangle. I know about the situation in my country. And the colonel said, well, no problem. Just come and talk to the press conference. But when, I appear at the press conference, Dr. DuPont introduced me to the national press and also international media corps. They asked me about the political and the situation in Vietnam. And the first question they asked is, You know that North Vietnamese are proposing to cease fire, but their armed units will remain in the country, in South Vietnam. What is your view on that? And I told the international press that in the Geneva Convention, which was signed by North Vietnamese Premier Pham Van Dong, and also the Chinese Premier Chu Enlai, there was no mention about armed force by North Vietnam stay in South Vietnam. There was an agreement that those who want to live in a free country can migrate to the South. And we have 1 million of migration people from North Vietnam to the South. And those who don't want to live in South Vietnam, who want to live in a communist country, can move to the North. And that's about the Geneva Convention. So when you talk about an armed unit in South Vietnam, that's a violation of the Geneva Convention. And then they asked me about what about President Thieu, who run monopoly on that election coming. And I say that, well, the Vietnamese Constitution has a provision that if other candidates, withdrew their name at the last minute, our Constitution allow the only candidate or his group can hold a referendum. And in the referendum, President Thieu and his running mate, Mr. Trần Văn Hoang, won more than 70% of the yes vote, the vote that vote for them as the president and vice president. So their win is legitimate as a president and vice president of South Vietnam. So after that, I didn't pay any attention to that. But in the evening news, the U.S. TV broadcast about what happened. And my boss at the Vietnamese embassy in Washington, D.C., they wrote a very good report saying, we have a young officer from the police department who defend for our cause and point out, what's wrong with the proposal. So my boss, Ben, say, we have to praise Mr. Hoang Lee for his effort. So that's how, I get into more confidence with my government.
Mm-hmm. So you go back to Vietnam.
Vietnam.
And how much longer did you serve with the police department there?
For 3 more years.
And were you doing narcotics that whole time?
Narcotic, and at night I have to fight the communist insurgents.
And so how did that?
Because normally the communists will attack the city just like that at night, and we have to group as soldiers. And I was in full uniform as soldiers, so we can go out and post ourselves at stronghold in the area like high rises, so that we can defend the city.
So how does that work in Vietnam? Is the police department a part of the national military, or are they two different?
We are two different entities.
But you're actually having basically combat operations as a police officer against.
Yes, correct. But we were paramilitary group, and our job is to protect the city, protect the safety of the people in the city. The military, their job is out there in the front line, fighting against infiltration to the borders and the remote area. Yeah.
So did you participate in some of these battles inside the city of Saigon?
Yes, but normally, they involved with crime and other narcotics. So I was chasing out some bad guy, and we exchanged far. And I almost got killed in those operations at night. Yeah.
Can you tell us about one of those?
Yes, one of those is about our office in Thailand. DEA in Thailand intercept a teletype from the drug trafficker in Thailand to the drug trafficker in Vietnam, telling the guy in Vietnam that we have just sent you 25 black pigs, P-I-G, pigs. And the U.S. DEA office in Bangkok suspect that it was the narcotic opium. So they sent that email to me and say, hey, Hoang, teletype, say, Hoang, can you take a look at this? It may be some kind of trafficking. And I took some action. I used the flash roll, and we conduct some kind of buy. And then when we arrest the street dealers, he cooperated. He told us, where he got the drug, exactly to the address that the bad guy sent the narcotic to Vietnam. So we have a raid, search warrant. And then the bad guy was a Thai citizen. He received a Vietnamese ID card, and he brought his family from Thailand to live in Vietnam. And some way, somehow, he ended up in that apartment. And when we come in and arrest him, he used the rope, and he climbed and escaped, went down and escaped. And I carried my gun. I chased after him. And there were some other people with their gun and pointed at me, ready to shoot at me. But I was able to shoot one person down. And they shot at me, and I returned the fire and grabbed his gun. But that guy almost died. So I left him there. I went back to my unit, and they surround me. And they almost killed me. So with the local military. And my boss at the police headquarters, he heard about this. So he called the governor of Saigon and Jadin, who was a military general. And they brought people and the Vietnamese National Police Field Force and the military police to come and assist me. So we found a guy who escaped to the second floor, and we arrested him. That's how I involved in that kind of business. Mm-hmm. And then when
were you in plainclothes at this time?
I was in plainclothes, but my driver has a police car down in the street. But he was arrested by the people who protect the bad guy. Mm-hmm. So that's how my involved in this kind of business at night. And then DEA headquarters sent in a team, a very high-ranking officer to Vietnam, and trying to talk to my boss, say, can you remove Hoang from that kind of duty, because it's dangerous at night. Let him do the criminal investigation during the day.
So, I'm sorry, go on.
And my boss kind of upset the general, of the police. Say, you're coming here and tell me how to do my job.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that I'd be in trouble, but he realized that I have a very good relationship with the U.S. Embassy and DEA, so he left me alone.
I'm sorry, I'm just readjusting here. So you do that for, you said 3 more years, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so at what point in time, well, before I get to that, so during those 3 years, were you involved in a lot more work with defending the city?
Not only that, but we're also involved in intercepting narcotic from Thailand, from the Golden Triangle to Vietnam by boat, most of them for the consumption in Vietnam, but some of them went to Hong Kong for conversion into heroin for shipment to the U.S. We seized 10 tons of opium one time.
Wow.
300 kilograms of, which is about 400 or 500 pounds of morphine base to be converted into heroin. And you know, those days, 1 kilogram of heroin cost about $50,000. Now it's about $150,000, $200,000. And that's pure heroin. If they step on it several times, it's going to be $300,000 or $400,000 easily at the U.S. market. But we intercept about 5 Thai trawlers like that during my 3 years as a chief of the Narcotic Bureau. So our American counterparts, they trust me because there were rumors in Thailand that the evidence that we seized were also smuggled out and sold it back to the bad guy. So there was a lot of gambling in Thailand. They say, we guarantee you that nothing left. So it raised some kind of suspicion with the U.S. authority. So I said, okay, if you want it, I can organize a ceremony to destroy them, all the evidence. And I want to invite your chemists. I want to invite your newspaper, to come and check the qualities and the evidence. So I also offer to, your the medal from my president to all of you who involved in this. So on that day, they came, they checked the drugs, and with international press, and even the U.S., the British consulate in Hong Kong, they sent some people to come over and check on it. They came out as very high, pure quality heroin, and they also trust me because that drug evidence is all accounted for. I learned it from DA too, because I know that the chain of custody is very important, and how to preserve the integrity of the evidence. So that also helped my career. And in 1975.
So in 1975, is that when you transitioned to the DEA?
Correct. When in 1975, DEA wanted to evacuate me at the end of the war there. So they found some money for training, and they want to invite me to Washington, D.C. to attend a DEA training course.
Were you married at this time?
Yes, I was married, my wife, and I have a daughter. And they invite me for that, and I don't know whether during that time, the Communist force is very close. They already took over Ban Me Thuot, one of the Central Highland province. They are advancing. I don't know whether my boss will allow me to leave the country because I have to go back out there in 5 years, 3 years ago. But when he saw my name, he knew about my contribution in 1972 about defending our cause, and so he said that he approved for me to go. So I left Vietnam after the communists advanced toward about half of South Vietnam already, and I attended the course for about 4 weeks, and Saigon almost collapsed. Now, my friend, a colonel from the White House, also involved with DEA, he asked for a telephone call to the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. And DEA is determined to move my wife, my kids out of the country too. So he called, and because by that time the landline is very hard to talk, very hard to call, but he said this is from the White House, so he can make the call. And he asked DA in the U.S. Embassy there, say, can you say Hoang wife and daughter? And DA agent there, who is also a good friend of mine, he was the country attaché. He said, yes, we will try. So he stayed there for the last minute. And he took my wife and my daughter to the military air base in Saigon. They call Tanzania Air Base. That night, President Thieu, he resigned. And then a few evacuation airplanes with orphans from Vietnam were shot down. So a lot of kids and nurses died in that flight. And my wife and my kid were the next flight out. They were evacuated by this special agent from DEA. When he went through the checkpoint, he didn't have any name, any list for evacuation, but he said that this is my wife, my kid. And the Vietnamese officer, who stopped him, say, show me the paper. He said, he took all the money in his pocket. Here's the paper, let him go. Let him go. So I said, okay, let him go. So they went to the base and sat there. And then when the, I think the C-130, the American cargo plane landed, they opened the bottom there. Everybody come in, and he took.
So this was 1975. What month was that?
It was April.
April.
April, I think 23rd or 24th, April.
That must have been a very good friend of yours.
Yes.
To do that.
Oh, his father was the deputy director for immigration, INS. He asked him, say, get out of Vietnam right now. He said, Dad, I will, but he tried to stay there at the last minute. Before he took my wife, my kids out, he has to go and ask my father permission, because my father lived in very remote area near the advance of the communists. But he came over there with a CIA agent and a driver from the diplomatic security office from the U.S. Embassy, and he saw my father and said, sir, I want to bring Hoang and his daughter to the U.S. Will you agree to that? And my father said, please take them. So he evacuated my wife and my daughter to Clark Air Base. And from Clark Air Base, he evacuated them to Guam. And in Guam, he transferred to another agent who was stationed there. That agent later, he involved in an undercover job, and he got shot in the accident. So I feel very bad about that. But
what was his name?
I forgot all of that name, but I can look it up. But the agent that came back, his name is Steve Green.
Steve Green, is he the one that helped your family?
Correct.
Okay, Steve Green.
Steve Green. He became the deputy administrator for DEA later on. His father also helped my wife and my kid to be admitted to the U.S. because by that time there was no refugee camp, there was no admission to any refugee by that time. And my wife happened to have some money left, so she bought the ticket for herself and for my daughter. So they flew from Guam to San Francisco and to Washington, D.C. to be reunited with me.
How old was your daughter?
By that time, she was 8 years old.
What was that like to be able to see them? I mean, that must have been a very scary time for you. Not sure.
Oh yes, when they get out of Vietnam, the same colonel from the White House knocked on my apartment in Washington, D.C. We had it for the training, and he said, Hoang, I want to tell you some good news. The first good news is your wife and your kids are safe now in the Philippines. And the next morning I went to the class, the DEA administrator, he came down and he congratulated me. Said, well, everything is okay now. And he asked me, do you want to stay here and work for us? I said, I'd be very happy to work for DEA because, all my friends are from DEA. But I'm not a U.S. citizen. I just came over as an international student. And he said, don't worry about that. We take care of that.
So how long did it take for you to get your citizenship?
About 5.5 years. However, he looked at the chief counsel. He asked, is there any way we can hire Hoang? So they asked me, what did you do before with the U.S.? I said, yeah, I was interpreter, translator for USAID. I worked with the U.S. military. I, went out on the battlefield with them. And said, let's get him in as an interpreter for DEA for 1 year. And then after my wife came in, she was a pharmacist, and with immigration law, they allow her to become a permanent resident with the green card, and I become also a green card holder. And I went to court. I take an oath that whenever I change to become a U.S. citizen, I will apply for a U.S. citizen. That's how it make me qualify for a job with DEA.
So when did you become an agent?
I became an agent in 1960. 77. I became an agent.
So you were actually an agent before you were a citizen?
Yes, yeah, but with limited role, I cannot carry a badge, go out there and make arrests. Yeah.
But at some point, were you a full agent? Did you become a full agent after you get your citizenship?
Yes, after I get my citizenship, they give me my gun, my badge, and say, well, now you go out there and make the arrest and do the full agent, field assignment. Yeah.
So how long did you work for the DEA?
I worked for DEA for about almost 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an incredible story.
Yes.
Do you know of anybody else in the DEA who has a similar story like that?
Maybe.
Another country that was brought in and.
Yeah, maybe one agent, his involvement was, he was from Thailand, but he married to American lady, and then he brought in, but he was not in the war zone like me. Mm-hmm. And he went undercover and get shot and killed in Los Angeles. Mm. So, yeah, we have another agent like that, but not at my extent,
Yeah.
The story that I'm involved with the U.S. military, with public safety, with DEA. Yes.
So, as you and I were talking before the camera was rolling, you're a unique interview for us. Typically, we're interviewing U.S. soldiers about their experiences overseas. Yeah. You have a unique view, I would say, about the U.S. military. What are your thoughts about your experiences with the U.S. military during Vietnam? What are your thoughts about the military?
We have very good people that I work with from all the unit that I work with. I tell you about the Green Beret Special Force. Those sergeants only, they work with me and they say, Hoang, what do you need? I have a police station out there, near the border of the city. They need some bunker, they need some cement sent back. They say, we get some cement out of date, almost, become rock. If you can use it, we take it out for you. They're very good people that I work with. I went to Cuchi, where we have the U.S. Army there, and the Viet Cong was digging their tunnel under the ground. But nowadays they make it as a tourist attraction place. They make it wider, and they say They have even a hospital down there, but it was not true. It was only propaganda. And I work with U.S. Air Force people, and they say, "Hey, Hoang, I'm flying to Udon today. You need anything from there?" I say, "Can you get me a pair of speakers?" They say, "Okay, no problem." So they help me. So I have very good friends in the military. And one of the agents there, he come back. Steve Green was a former Marine. And he was the first Marine that landed in Da Nang, they call China Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, as you know, we're videotaping right now, and you're going to receive a video
Okay.
by a couple months. And one of your great-great-grandchildren might stumble upon the video many years from now. What would you want them to know about your service to South Vietnam, the South Vietnamese people, as well as the American people? What would you want them to know?
We spent millions of people. Many millions of South Vietnamese people die. We have almost 60,000 Americans who come to Vietnam and fight for our democracy, for our freedom. That is not a waste. I want my children to remember that. And it's now their job to fight for everybody, democracy and freedom, just like their great-grandfathers did in the Vietnam War, also with the help of the American, military and civilian in Vietnam.
Well said. Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Experience, I can't thank you enough for coming in. This story was fascinating to me. Just how you found yourself in the middle of a war in South Vietnam, and then worked your way to America to become an American citizen, and then continued for 30 years to be a DEA agent. Is just absolutely amazing to me, and I think it really shows the story of America on how somebody can immigrate here and have a successful life like you did is just very admirable. And I thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
That's
you, sir.
very much. Thank you. I appreciate this. And I always remember from the American side that the core value of the U.S., the value of the U.S. in protecting human rights, and democracy for everyone in the world. That's we respect, and we always, in our heart, we have to appreciate that.
Well said.
Thank you.